Hello, welcome back to the podcast for today. We're going to be talking about one of the wars in history called the Falklands Wars. It's about a war between Britain and Argentina that happened on the Falkland Islands. Now, why am I talking about this? No reason in particular, unless you know the reason. If you don't know the reason, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. So, might as well just get started. So, the Falklands War happened in 1982, and it lasted like a couple of months. It's not really that big of a deal. Anyhow. So, the Falklands War, it was a limited war, which is... It's like a bunch of types of wars, and limited warfare is one of the types. There's like 5 of them or something. And it's you might be asking yourself, now what is limited warfare? Now, limited war is a war where the people involved, they don't use all of the resources that they have at their disposal, right? So, like, the country doesn't use every person that they have to start working on the war. So, a limited war would only have, like, the soldiers or whatever go out to fight, whereas the rest of the people would still go about their normal lives. Like, most people wouldn't need to be aware that there's a war. Whereas, for example, the opposite of a limited war, which is a total war, means the whole country's involved, and literally everyone is involved in the war, and is suffering the consequences or being directly involved. They also use all of their industrial, agricultural, and military power, which is going, like, all the way they can with their military, and all the agriculture is going directly towards the war, all the resources, you know. Natural and technology as well, all of it for the war, you know. That would be a total war. But a limited war, no, we're not doing that. It's only like some of the stuff. Only some of the stuff is being used. Only what's needed, not all. So that's what this war is. They only use like part of it, because it's the Falkland Islands. If you look on the map, it's like not a big area, so they don't need to fight that hard for it. Like, I don't think they matter. I don't think they care too much who gets it and who doesn't. It's more of just, it would be nice to have. It'd be pretty nice to have, but if they don't get it, it's not really big of a deal. So that's why it's just a limited war. The conflict takes place in a limited area. That's also another feature of a limited war. That just means that, well, the war only happened in the Falkland Islands itself. It didn't really happen in Argentina or in Britain, just on the islands. So, limited area, another very large indicator of it being a limited war. Limited warfare also means limited targets. For example, you don't bomb the civilians. So, a lot of times in total war, they like to bomb the civilians or start killing the people that live in the country. Because, well, it helps them, because that means that country has less people now, because you just killed them. And obviously that's not a good thing, but luckily, this is not a total war. This is just a limited war, which means that they're not purposely trying to kill civilians. While some civilians did die, not many. And that wasn't like their goal. They weren't purposely trying to, so that's another indicator. Another example is the goal of the war is not just surviving. They have their own separate goals. The Falkland Islands, like, Argentina wants to take the islands from Britain. So that's their goal. And Britain's goal is just trying to keep the island. The goal isn't to survive being killed by the other. If it was, then it'd be a total war, but it's not. So, limited. Now, why was it limited? Well, I kind of talked about it throughout, but what's the purpose of it being limited, though? Like, it reduces the chance of a world war, because, I don't know if you know this, but Britain is kind of a big place. It's pretty small, actually, if you look on the map, but in terms of how much power it has, it's quite large. So if it gets fully involved in a war, like in a total war, it'll likely result in a world war. So another one. And this happened in like 1982, I'm pretty sure, like this. So it's like, that would be pretty stupid to do. And they already had like 2 world wars years ago, so don't want to do that again. Britain was also able to maintain like a lot of their resources, because if you just go all in, you have a lot less resources, right? Like, let's say you use all of the X resources that you have for the war, and you don't have it anymore. Whereas if you only use as much as you need, like a part of it, that's a lot better, you know, and you get to keep some of it. Another reason why it was limited is that, well, Britain had a large amount of power, as I talked about, and if they forced it into a total war, would have became a world war. Next topic. So, what caused this war, right? Because we just talked about it being a limited war, because we know it's clearly a limited war. It's definitely not a total war or any of the other kinds, because there is some other kinds, but I feel like those are more subcategories. So, causes of the war. Now, the Falkland Islands have actually kind of a big history when it comes to who has owned the place. In the past, it was primarily, well, actually, it was just a variety of European countries. The first time it was ever owned by was in 1964 by France. Before then, it was pretty much just animals living there. No people lived there until France colonized there in 1764, and that lasted like a good amount of time, like not too long. It lasted a year. France owned the Falklands for a year until 1765, which is when that's when Britain decided to get its foot in the door, because it's like, well, we can take it, right? If they think they can handle it, so they go and they invade the Falklands, and they keep it for another 5 years until like 1770 or something. It's pretty crazy. Like they have it at this point, they've kind of had it its whole lifetime, except for the 1 year at the beginning that France had it. France never gets it again, by the way. It's like pretty much just Britain. Then after 1770, then Spain gets it until 1811. From 1770 to 1811, Spain is colonized. They did not colonize. They took over the Falklands. So now Spain has had it for like a lot of time, because Britain only had it for 5 years. Spain had it for much longer. So now Spain has had it for a majority of its time existing. And then in 1811, then Argentina at this point is part of Spain. Like they are Spain. They are just a colony of Spain. Before 1811 is when Argentina became its own independent country from Spain. So that's when it decided to, hey, let's be a different country. And they took the Falklands with them, because like if you look at the map, the Falklands is like right beside Argentina. It's like these little islands hanging off of Argentina or whatever. So it's like it would make total sense for the islands to become part of Argentina now, which is exactly what happened. So now in 1811 till 1833, the Falkland Islands become part of Argentina instead of a part of Spain, which it has been. And then after 1833, then Britain decides, no, see, we're going to get it now. And then Britain takes over once more and then owns it until today. But what about the war? What happened during the war? So Britain owned it in 1833. And then in 1982, over 100 years later, Argentina's like, wait a minute. Didn't we used to own this land? We owned it in like 1811 to 1833. We owned it for like 22 years. We deserve to have the land. It's like right there. It's right beside us. Why wouldn't Argentina have it? But then Britain's like, no. So they do the Falkland Islands War, and then Britain wins, and they keep it until present day. So basically nothing happened in the war. But I can't do this part. Okay, so all of the countries involved had different perspectives of what happened, right? So I'll just talk about like the biggest ones, like the UK, Britain, also the Falkland Islanders, the people who actually lived on the island itself, because I think their perspective is pretty important as well, and also Argentina, because obviously, and we'll also talk about some smaller ones, like smaller countries, like the super small United States. That's a small country, no one cares. But first, the UK. So the people in the UK believed that the Falkland Islands were a rightful part of the British Empire, and that they were protecting the islanders from the invading Argentines. Because, yeah, Argentina was invading the Falklands, and the British just thought, we're just protecting our people from the Argentinas. What about Argentina? What did they think? You know, Argentina, they felt that the islands were a part of Argentina, as it has been in the past, and it's literally right beside Argentina. And it's pretty much Argentinian people that live there a lot, because it was owned by Spain and Argentina in the past, so a lot of Spanish. They speak Argentinian there. Yeah. Argentinians felt that the island was part of Argentina and that they were just regaining their land, right? And also the military government had given up negotiations, because the military originally of Argentina were trying to negotiate with Britain in order to get these lands back, because it's just the Falkland Islands, right? Why would Britain care? So they're like, please give us the islands, and Britain's like, no, the UK doesn't want you to have it. So Argentina's like, okay, let's just invade it then. So then that's why they resorted to invasion, because they wouldn't let Argentina have it, the stupid little island that has like 3 people in it. Yeah, what about the Falkland Islanders themselves? Now, so most of the islanders were made of British colonists, and most of them sympathized with the British, so they kind of like thought that they were on Britain's side mostly, because, well, they're a British land, right? Even though they live they're next door to Argentina, they are British, most of them. So they kind of sided with Britain on this one. Now, what about the United States, right? This very small country, the USA. They actually supported Britain. So far, it seems like no one's on Argentina's side, which is actually pretty accurate. Well, it is accurate. I'm telling you historical facts here. None of this is lies. This is literally the truth, as I've researched. Mostly me. No. They supported the United States supported Britain. And actually, Argentina did not expect that. Argentina expected the USA to support Argentina themselves, because I don't know why. They just felt that they would. But that's not what happened. And then the United States continued to support the British after the sinking of one of the big ships that Britain sent out. So they kind of just supported Britain all the way. And the United States they were also scared of like the Soviets interfering, which was like a big fear at the time, because the Cold War was kind of happening around this era as well. And you know, the Soviets could have interfered with this, because at the time Britain and the Soviets were also kind of at a war. So the United States was kind of worried about them doubling up on the wars there, which fortunately didn't really happen. The Falkland Island War only lasted like 3 months. I don't know. Latin America. What about the rest of Latin America? You know, aside from Argentina? Yeah, most of them supported Argentina, actually. So I guess now a majority of the countries listed support Argentina, you know. So, but Chile supported the UK, so they kind of got trolled on that one, which Chile is like, their only neighbor is Argentina, essentially. I guess Bolivia too, but no one cares. So Chile supported the UK for some reason, and they actually had a border dispute with Argentina, so they were kind of arguing there about that for a bit while the Falkland Island War was going on. So I'm guessing they weren't the best of friends during this time. You know, that's kind of my assumption. And the rest of Europe, of course, supported the UK. So I guess probably most countries supported the UK at this point. So yeah, Europe supported the UK, Latin America supported Argentina, except for Chile. Chile just wants to be different. Now, what exactly happened? You know, like what are the direct events? So, obviously we know at the start in like 1833 or whatever. It was not 1833. That's not when it started. That was when Argentina lost control of it to Britain. At what year was it? 1982. Yeah, Britain owned them in 1992. 1982. Then Argentina invaded April 2nd of 1982 of that year, which is why that's the start date, because that's when they started to invade. But then April 3rd, like the day after, Argentina invaded South Georgia. South Georgia is like a place very close to the Falkland Islands, and that's what they used to get to the Falklands. So they invaded South Georgia right after they invaded the Falklands. They invaded the Falklands on April 2nd. April 3rd, they invaded the Falklands itself. So, no, April 3rd, they invaded the South Georgia, yeah. So on April 5th, 2 days after, Britain launches a naval and air force on this April 5th presumed day. What does that mean? So naval, people don't know what that usually means. It means under the water. And air force means in the air. So probably like a plane or something to get the, tourists. The conflict ended on June 14th of 1982 when Argentina just surrendered. They just gave up and all the land that they took went back to Britain. So nothing really happened. Nothing happened, which is the funniest part. What happened next? We're just skipping. So the consequences and the impact of this war. So the Falkland Island. Okay, 3 people from the Falkland Islands itself were killed. Just 3 normal guys. They just died. So that's a sad part. So we also got over 2,000, like 2,306 Argentine casualties. So that's how many people in Argentina got casualtized. We also got 11,000 Argentina soldiers that were captured. So that's a lot, actually. That's a significant amount more than 2,000. They got captured. What happened to them? I don't know what happened. They just got captured. I also got like 649 Argentinian military were killed. So like 650 military from Argentina were killed, which unfortunate, obviously. We also got 255 Britain military killed. So overall, this seems like a bigger loss for Argentina than for Britain. So they kind of got the short end of the stick. They also lost the war. So obviously that sucked. Yeah. The culture of these 2 countries were also heavily impacted because, well, first of all, this was pretty recent in relation to time. So a lot of people that would have been alive during these parts would also be alive today. So yeah, their culture was impacted. So like there's a bunch of songs, books, and movies made about all like these events by both countries. One of the biggest examples, one example from Argentina that I found was called Los Chicos de la Guerra, which it just translates to The Children of the War. This book is actually, it's not a book, it's a movie. It's on DVD, it says. It's actually pretty interesting. It's about like 3 different people from 3 different social classes during the Argentina War. 3 people from Argentina in like different social classes in different situations, and how the war like kind of impacted them during how it went, right? Like some people, like there was like a rich guy and middle guy, and then a poor guy probably, and then like the rich guy, like he doesn't even probably go to the war, right? Because this isn't a total war, so he just goes to a bit of it. He just knows how it goes, kind of. And the middle guy is probably somewhat affected, and then the super poor guy, yeah. You also got the government of both countries were also heavily impacted by this war. So the president of Argentina at the time was called Leopoldo Galtieri. He was removed from power after this war, actually, and imprisoned, probably because he lost. And then the country became democratic right after. So, yeah, so that's kind of, I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. He got imprisoned for losing a war, and then they became democratic because they're like, this guy's not good at all. We got to switch up our whole how we pick our leaders. And then the leader of Britain at the time, Margaret Thatcher, became even more powerful than ever before, right? Because she won the war, she got the respect of all her people, right? And the British economy pretty boomed heavily. So Britain-America relations improved as well, especially because America was supporting Britain at the time. The relations between the two were also really good. So it just got better after this war, pretty much. Now, this also makes you really think, to what extent was Argentina justified in their raid of the Falkland Islands, therefore starting the Falkland War? Now, to what extent was Argentina justified in the raid of the Falkland Islands during the Falkland War? Now, I think that they were somewhat justified, just not too much. Like, it was their land. It's like right there. But like, overall, I don't think they should have done it. It's not their land. It was Britain's land. Even the people in the Falklands, as I said earlier, they wanted Britain to have the land. Like, they were all on Britain's side. I mean, to be fair, it was a British colony that lived there, so they're probably maybe a smidgen biased. But I don't know. I feel like Argentina. I think what happened as a whole, what did happen was all justified. Like, that's all fine. The outcome, the cause, and all that, I understand it all. I think that's all fair. Argentina invaded, started a small limited war, and then it just ended after a couple months. And that's kind of how they gave it a go. They gave a whack at it, and it just didn't work out, so they kind of backed off. If they kept going at it, then we probably would have gotten to more of a total war. For Argentina, at least. It might have become a world war if we got unlucky. So I think that them just going for it and it not working out, so they just quit, that seems fair for me. Of course, this was a big deal for people at the time. I'm just kind of glossing over that because compared to every other war, this war is like super insignificant. Let's be real here. Now, Britain had a far more powerful army than Argentina. Like, obviously, we know that Britain is a huge country. Not physically, Argentina is like bigger. But in terms of power, in terms of sheer power, the UK dominated Europe and would therefore dominate Argentina, who probably hasn't been in many wars at all. In fact, most of Argentina's army were just like fake. It was just a facade. They kind of just lied about it all. So Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of the UK, as well as Robert Muldoon, which is the Prime Minister of New Zealand at the time, they were pretty much in alliance with one another. And this meant that the population didn't like the population of New Zealand didn't like their leader, just blindly supporting the British for no reason, right? Like, the only reason they did was because they were friends, they were friends. But Robert Muldoon chose to help anyway. He only helped with some minor navy transport to the British, which is, fair. He didn't help too much to the war, but he would just kind of support it. The people were kind of salty about it. So, I mean, that's fair. So, another thing that happened was, before the conflict, Margaret Thatcher wasn't necessarily doing so well in terms of the relationship with the people and just basically her existence as a whole. And so, like, she saw a large opportunity in taking ownership of the Falklands, and she just kind of took it. Like, 'cause she was under the assumption that if she succeeded in her plan, that she would end up as the prime minister, because she wasn't before. And she did. She did succeed in her plan and became the prime minister, so it kind of all worked out for her. Which, I don't know if we should be supporting this kind of thing, but it worked out, this time at least, so that's good. Now I've ran out of material to talk about, so I can just make up some stuff. I'm not going to make it up, but Falkland War overall, I'll just give my thoughts. It was a small war. Like, it wasn't large or anything. It wasn't large by any means, but it was definitely not the smallest war ever. It lasted a couple months. Argentina tried to get their land back that they had in the past. It just didn't work. And so they ended up not getting the land. Almost nothing was lost. A lot of people died, though. Like, how many people died? Let's check again. It was like... I'm just checking real quick. Yeah, like 2,000 Argentinians committed casualties. They all casualtized. That's a lot of people. 11,000 soldiers were captured. Like, that's not a small number. What's the population of Argentina? I'm gonna look it up real quick. Population of Argentina. Argentina, 1982. Population. I'll just do 1980 because that should be more accurate towards what's actually happening. They 27,000. So 28,000. It rounds to. See, like 28,000 people, and 11,000 of their soldiers were captured. I don't know if you can do math or not, but that's like a bit less than half of their people. So, yeah, this was not good for them. This was a pretty big impact on Argentina. Whereas only 255 Britain military they got killed. The rest of them were all fine. So, like, Britain just chilled. This was, like, kind of a big war, actually, now that I think about it. It was a big war, but it was just so quick, because Argentina decided, no, we can't do this. We cannot do this. They just backed off, and they just let Britain, like, okay, you can, fine, have the land. We can't do anything. Just take it, which is reasonable. I don't think that they should have gone as far as they did now that I'm looking at it. Like, they probably shouldn't have gotten this far. They should have stopped a lot sooner. But I think Argentina had a right to attempt to get their land back. But it did say that they were negotiating about it before. So if they were negotiating to Britain in attempt to get their land back, and it just didn't work. They never end up getting their land back, and so they decided to invade, because that's the only viable option that they really saw, was to invade. And that also didn't work, because once again, the Britons said, no thanks. No thanks. Fuck you. So, overall, this was a big war, but it just happened in the shortest amount of time ever. And it's so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Like, I'm sure both countries, they were heavily impacted. Like, the government, like, Margaret Thatcher became prime minister because of it, and the Argentina prime minister got prime ministerized because of it. Like, he got imprisoned, and they wrote books and movies and songs. I mentioned the movie made by Argentina people. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like, that's a large impact. But, like, thinking about, like, modern day, like, right now, 2023, or whenever you're watching or listening, it's not a big deal. Like, this is not a long time. This is a very short amount of time. And it didn't affect much at all. It mostly just affected the culture in a minor way. And it probably didn't even affect Britain that much, because they have a lot on their plate. Or they did at the time. Not now, not so much. But yeah, this was it was a pretty ugly war. And personally, I would not want to be part of it. So yeah. Also, this is totally limited war, as we said earlier. And that's kind of all I have to say today about the Falkland War. If I were to leave you with one quote today, it would be that the Falklands War is most definitely a limited war due to the fact that only a small percentage of the British actually were a part of the war. They only used they also only used a small percentage of their total resources, which contributed to this being a limited war overall. Was, if you just look at the grand scheme of everything that happened, Britain did not use a significant amount of the resources. They only used a small bit. Argentina, on the other hand, did use a fair amount. However, that's just because they're a much smaller country, and they had to do that to keep up with Britain. And they didn't even use all of their people and all of their resources, because they didn't have to. They weren't the most passionate about it. They were just pretty passionate about it. So yeah, I'm just trying to get to 30 minutes here. I'm just trying to get a fun little quote in here at the end. So, since the area was only in this small section, the Falkland Islands, this cannot be a total war, right? Because it's just like this small little area. So I don't know how anyone could perceive this as a limited war. Also, information about this podcast itself. This is brought to you by me, Mr. Podcast. You're probably wondering, why haven't you uploaded for like 12 days? I've been sick. I was sick for like a week. I'm better now. I've been better for like the past few days. But I don't know. I've tried to upload. I tried to record an episode like a week ago, and it was just full of me sniffling. And I figured it was a whole 30 minutes too. There's a full episode just of me talking about a topic that I'll do it another day. Maybe tomorrow, maybe a different day, but like it just didn't work. It just wasn't any good because of all my sniffles. And I didn't want that to go up, right? I was editing it and I was like, no, this is garbage. I just deleted it all. But yeah, that's about it, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.